Good evening and welcome to the National September 11th Memorial and Museum. My name is Dahlia. I'm the Director of Public and Professional Programs here, and it's an honor to have you all here today. And as always, I'd like to extend a special welcome to our museum members and to those turning in to our live broadcast tonight for the program All Available Boats. Tonight's program will explore the largest waterborne evacuation in American history and maybe world history, when on 9/11, boats from across the region descended on Manhattan to help evacuate those who were trapped. Ultimately, an estimated 300,000 to 500,000 people were transported to safety in less than 9 hours. Our speakers tonight will reflect further on this massive effort, and I will introduce them in a moment. But before I do, it is my pleasure to introduce the film Boatlift, an untold story of 9/11 resilience. Produced and directed by Eddie Rosenstein, who is with us here today. Narrated by Tom Hanks, Boatlift is a short documentary that brilliantly depicts the evacuation through the stories of those who were there and those who responded. It is a poignant reminder of the remarkable acts of heroism that occurred on the day and pays tribute to those who selflessly sprang into action to save so many. The film has a running time of 12 minutes. Following the film, I will come back on stage to introduce your speakers for the panel today. Thank you. Thank you, Eddie, for sharing that film with the museum and allowing us to screen it as part of our program tonight. We are privileged to be joined by our 4 panelists tonight who will share their uniquely informed perspectives this evening. Eddie Rosenstein is the president of iPop Productions and the director of the award-winning documentary Boatlift. He had produced and directed many other award-winning, internationally distributed documentary films, including The Freedom to Marry, School Play, Waging a Living, and A Tickle in the Heart, and Sandhogs. He has created nonfiction films and series for streamers and networks, including Netflix, PBS, A&E, History, HBO, Lifetime, and AMC. His work has won dozens of top prizes at film festivals, and he has received multiple Emmy nominations. He has lectured at universities and corporations around the world and has been teaching graduate-level film directing at the New York Film Academy since 2008. Richard Thornton is a New York Waterway captain, and prior to working as a ferry boat captain at New York Waterway starting in 1990, he served in the U.S. Navy, retiring as Senior Chief Boatswain's Mate after 26 years of service. In addition to his efforts on 9/11, he also worked during other major events in the New York Harbor, including the first bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993, the Great Blackout of 2003, and the Miracle on the Hudson in 2009, and Hurricane Sandy in 2012. Gulmar Parga is the former Chief Marine Engineer for the FDNY. Gulmar joins the FDNY in 1997 after serving in the U.S. Coast Guard. During that time, he also re-enlisted in the Coast Guard Reserve as a machinery technician. He deployed to Iraq and patrolled the northern Arabian Gulf on the CGC Baranof from 2003 to 2004. In 2005, he was then transferred to the U.S. Army, where he deployed to Afghanistan with the 69th Infantry. He retired from the military after 20 years of service as Staff Sergeant. And John Hillin is the U.S. Coast Guard Safety and Security Division Chief. Hillin has been with the U.S. Coast Guard since 1988. In 2001, Hillin worked as the Port Safety and Security Branch Chief of the U.S. Coast Guard. He has received many awards and recognitions throughout his career, including several specifically honoring his response to 9/11 and his leadership in the years and months following the attacks. These include the Department of Transportation 9/11 Medal, Commandant's Superior Achievement Award, and the Department of Homeland Security Excellence Award. So if you can join me in welcoming our 4 panelists with Noah Rauch. Thank you.
Thank you, Dahlia. I want to echo Dahlia and welcome everyone here this evening. I see lots of familiar faces and not as familiar faces, but welcome to everyone and to our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I do have one programming note that starting on November 8th, we're going to be screening Boatlift downstairs at the main exhibition levels of the museum daily throughout the day for museum visitors. As you just saw, it is a fantastic film, and we are really excited to be able to give this story the visibility that it clearly deserves. And so that'll be starting on November 8th in the South Tower Screening Room, which is just adjacent to the South Tower Gallery. So Eddie, I want to start with you because, one, congratulations, it's a great film. But something, as I was talking to friends and family about this is a story that most people just don't know, in spite of the scale of what was achieved that day. It's incredibly compelling, but people don't know about it. So I'm curious if you knew about it before making the film, and if not, sort of how you came to the story and then how the project came together.
Yeah, well, thank you for having all of this, and it's an honor to be here. It's like hallowed ground. It's really special. But my wife and I, we were here on that day, and we were, affected, going through the dust, but we did not know this story, and it wasn't until years later. A fellow named Steve Flynn, who is, the executive producer of this, he was asked, he had been involved with Obama's transition team as the, you'd have to get the title straight, but like head of national security advisory or something. And he was former Coast Guard. And so he had started an organization called the Center for National Policy. And President Obama had asked him to organize the 10-year anniversary event, the national event around 9/11. I had, my partner at my company and I had done a lot of work with the Red Cross, a lot of preparedness work, and a lot of pro bono work for many organizations dealing with preparedness because we had been so affected in 9/11. So somebody at the Red Cross, National American Red Cross, he said, who would be a good filmmaker to do this? And they said, we always call Eddie and Rick. So he had the idea for the 10-year anniversary, he and Obama's idea was to make it a film festival and have about a half dozen short films. And they asked us if we were interested in doing 2 of them. And of course we said, whatever you want to do. And and then they told us this story, and they pitched a bunch of ideas, whatever we were interested in. And when they told us this story, we really couldn't believe that this had happened under our noses. And as a documentary filmmaker, I mean, maybe a lot of you all were here and knew this whole story, but I'm always interested in what goes on the other side of the camera. And all the news cameras point this way, but the humans are usually in the other direction. And I was in the middle of actually doing a television pilot, and I only had about 10-day gap between a month of shooting in California and then a month of shooting in DC. So the people in my company, including Rick, went and met dozens of captains to see if this is actually real and to put them on tape and see if we could pick a bunch that might be able to represent the story. We weren't even sure how to tell the story. And as I watched their interviews, preliminary stuff, the story became pretty clear.
Yeah.
So.
And the archival footage is unbelievable as well throughout. I mean, you paint a picture that is incredibly dramatic in the 12 minutes that you have. And it's not the only 9/11 sort of focused film that you've made. What is it about 9/11 that draws you back?
Well, regular people doing the best they can under difficult circumstances is always a compelling story. And that was their idea for this 10-year anniversary. And you're right, I've made 3 or 4 other 9/11 focused films. But the concept that the president at the time, and certainly Steve Flynn, wanted to focus on was that when something happens, it's the people sitting next to you. It's not the government that's coming. It's not a, code orange or blue, whatever that is. You're not going to wait for the military to roll up. It's actually the guy next to you on the subway. It's the people who rise up and do it. And that is what preparedness is all about. And I had helped Red Cross game plan and workshop all sorts of preparedness models. And we were fascinated by this over and over again. Block parties, just people knowing each other, knowing who lives in that house at a certain moment. All of these things are actually what resilience are. And resilience isn't that you will never take a shot. It's how fast you're able to get back up afterwards. So I fully bought into the concept and the story of it, but 9/11 is one of America's finest examples of people coming together as we do, as people do in these moments.
Well, you saw it over and over again. So let's go back. Let's go back to 2001, and actually want to go back a little bit before 9/11, to sort of just set the scene, because as New York is the third biggest port in the world, and I'm only speaking for myself, but I had just no sense of really what happens on the water. And there's a lot that, as it turns out, that happens on the water. And so I think it would be helpful just for all of us to sort of understand the comings and goings and what the port looks like and who's out there and what's coming in and out. So, John, maybe I'll start with you to sort of paint that picture for us, and then I'll turn it over to Gulmar and Rick as well.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the video, Boatlift. It's been, full disclosure, I didn't realize how big it was until 10 years when I saw it for the first time after the event. But yeah, the port this is one of the biggest ports in the world. It's one of the biggest ports in the country. So just about everything that could be moved by water is moved by water. People, oil, chemicals, different types of cargo, autos, one of the busiest auto ports in the world as well, or in the country as well. So we also have ferries. Ferries have grown significantly, but we have quite a number of dinner boats that are operating, a lot of sightseeing vessels and so forth. We have pilot associations that are sailing all the vessels in and out of the port. We have tugs that are either pushing barges or escorting vessels in the event of potential, protecting the waterways and so forth. We actually have a vessel traffic service, Coast Guard vessel traffic service, that's managing the flow of traffic in and out of the port. You have Marine Fire Department, FDNY, we have NYPD Harbor Patrol, we have Coast Guard, we have New Jersey State Police Harbor Patrols, Department of Environmental Conservation Harbor Patrols, a lot of different boats on the water, trying to create an environment where, it's a commercial port, but also it's a recreational port. Particularly during the summer seasons, you'll see quite a number of recreational vessels too. So it's a shared port. It's a heavy cargo port, but it's a shared port.
And so what's the Coast Guard's role in the port?
The Coast Guard's role in the port is to make sure this all happens safely. So for our next trick, right? And to try to organize the flow of traffic, to make sure people have the right safety equipment. We do inspections on the vessels. We monitor traffic. We manage the waterways. We stay in communication to keep vessels from colliding. We respond when there's incidents, whether it's a propulsion failure, or recently we just had a fire this past weekend. I don't know if you guys saw that on the news, but we were dealing with that. I'm sure the captain was busy with that all weekend. And, we pretty much are the harbor enforcement for the port to make sure it's safe. And it's safe for you folks too, your recreation. We have kayakers, we have paddle boat users, we have jet skiers, we have, boats that are transiting through the port. And you all should be able to use the port. And we find a way to be able to make it harmonious between commercial and recreational too.
That's great, thank you. So Gulmar, you work for the FDNY, for the Marine Unit. I think most people, or many people might not know that the FDNY has a Marine Unit. Mm-hmm. So if you can talk about what your job was in 2001.
Let's see, where do I start now? Thank you everybody for having me here, but I think our response to the whole thing started after the first plane hit and the second alarm was sounded. It came over the loudspeaker, and that's when we went outside and saw the towers burning, and we got down there as fast as we could. It was the fireboat John McKean, and we got to the seawall, and I could go as long or as short as you like on this story. I could go the whole 15 minutes. But in a nutshell, it was when the first tower came down and the dust cloud rolled over us and everybody panicked, like was in the video. We were as well. We were treating injured civilians before the tower fell and sending them over to the New York waterways there. And this was before the call came in. So the tower fell, and I'm gonna say it was a waterfall of people falling on the boat, just like the dust. And we're trying to get them on as safely and as quickly as possible. And once the dust cloud cleared, we took them across the river to New Jersey. This was in between the first and second tower collapse. We found an abandoned pier across the river, and Weehawken and then the Hoboken first responders were there to help us get all the injured off. There was approximately 250 people, dogs, even 6 infants. I'm sure we had to shut down the blowers on on the boat to stop sucking in the dust, but we got everyone off and we got back to Manhattan and we asked, I'm going to say Jimmy Campanelli, he asked the dispatcher, should we continue evacuating the civilians? And they said, no, your job now is to start pumping water because all the fire mains are ruptured west of the World Trade Center and we need you to fight the fires to start pumping the water. But after that, we were still helping. There was civilians crossing our boat to get to other boats that were tied up outside us that were still evacuating all those civilians as the call came in. But yeah, we were very honored to have started this lift with the first 200. I won't say the first because Waterways was there. They were getting injured off the island in the very beginning. They never lost their schedule. They're always right on time.
I think you guys added a few boats, right?
It's a shame, but it's an honor to have participated in it and do what we did.
So I'm going to ask for some additional details in a little bit, but I'm curious, sort of in 2001, a Marine unit, what's your regular job if 9/11's not happening? I mean, you're pumping water, are you helping people on the water? Like, what were you trained to do?
Which is true. My job, I'm a Marine engineer. And let's see, when the towers, when they were hit, we're there on the seawall, I put on my hearing protection, I go in the engine room, and there's big giant valves, probably as big as a human being, big valves, and they open up the pipes that feed the water pumps that will pump 19,000 gallons a minute, enough to fill a pool in 30 seconds, or 3,000, you could imagine, right? It'll fill it quick. And we do that. I run the machinery that pumps the water in emergencies, basically. And I don't know, maybe, have any of you seen a water display out in the harbor when the fireboat is putting up the bid? So that's me as well. So it's not a sprinkler. Actually, we don't carry the water. We suck it from the sea and pump it.
Rick, what about you? In 2001, what was your job like?
I work for New York Waterway Ferry, and that boat, all the boats there are run on to the second almost. We had a very strict owner, Arthur Imperator. He wanted to run on clockwork no matter what the weather was like, the tide, the crowds of people. So he fired guys left and right. He wanted guys who would adhere to his very strict schedule, and it was a can-do attitude. You had to keep the schedule, you had to keep moving people fast and efficiently. The boats are about 100 feet long. It's a bow loader, so you just pull up to the dock, the deckhands open up the chains, the people get on the boat, you count heads, and then you transition to the other side. Most of the runs are short, straight across the Hudson River. So our days are mostly routine. We have a very set schedule. We have a strict timeline on when to be on the boat, when to fuel the boat, when to take the boats out of service. But most of it is very routine, which we're very grateful for, because anybody will tell you, you don't want excitement on the water. You want your day to be boring and routine and just another day at the office. Right. So excitement, no good.
We want precedented times is what we want. So how many people does one of those boats hold?
My boat was the Henry Hudson. It holds, it was certified by the Coast Guard for 399 people. There's, of course, reserve buoyancy. If you go to 400, 401, it's not going to sink. There's stability tests that they do very meticulously at the shipyard when it's built. It gets certified for certain routes, inland or coastwise or deep sea ocean voyaging. It has a certain set crewing. Documentation, it's certified for a certain amount of people, captain, deckhand, the crew is all regulated by the Coast Guard, and the captains are all certified, and they do take a test to get a Merchant Marine captain's license.
So you all, 3 different agencies, but in 2001, was there ever sort of training together or focused on sort of large-scale incidents that you worked on together?
Well, just before 9/11, there was the OpSail 2000, and I think there was a lot of coordination, a lot of evacuation planning around that. So there was a lot of, there was a lot building up to that. So that was fairly recent on us. So a lot of the plans that were put in place at least by the Coast Guard were plans that that existed previous in other forms, and we just kind of collaborated into the incident in itself. But part of the beauty of this port is the relationships. So like we know New York, I know author imperator, and I know APA trucking means always please author, right? That's what I know. Marine Fire Department, some of my closest working friends that I have, so we work very, very closely. So I think that was probably some of the success of 9/11 was because when we started working with these folks, it's people we already knew.
You mentioned earlier the pilots, and so just to give a primer, I think, for everybody about their role on the port as well, because they'll come into play on 9/11.
Sure. Well, a pilot is the one, we have two different phases of pilots here in the port. We have the pilots that are the sea pilots, they'll bring the vessels into the port, and then we have the docking pilots that will bring the vessel to the dock. So every commercial ship, large commercial ship that comes into port has to have a pilot. It really is very small vessels too, it's like a little over 100 feet too as well. But they require a pilot because they're familiar with the waterways, they're familiar with how to transit these vessels, make sure these vessels don't go into, don't run aground, or able to coordinate and communicate with other vessels and other pilots in the water as well. In 9/11, they, again, adapt to the situation. In 9/11, we were having what we call a harbor operations committee meeting, and it was actually taking place in the World Trade Center that day. And the pilots were a big part of the harbor operations committee, obviously. And so, before the meeting was to start, this all started happening, and the pilots reported to the Coast Guard base. And they offered their station boat, New York. Now they have they have launches that take the pilots to the vessels, but they also have a boat that's stationed offshore that the pilots live on, and they ride the launches to the vessels and back off the vessels. That particular vessel, and they have two of them right now, the New York and New Jersey. The New York was actually, tasked to go downtown and try to help manage the traffic. The ferry folks, they knew what they were doing. I think for the most part, we just said, stay out of the ferry folks' way. They do what they do, but then we had all these other vessels that were coming down when we called for all commercial vessels to come and assist in the evacuation. Initially, as a captain would probably attest, there was a lot of different vessels almost colliding with each other. The pilot boat New York, and we had a Coast Guard officer, Lieutenant Mike Day, on board the vessel. We had a Chief Jamie Wilson on board the vessel to help provide that Coast Guard authority as well with the pilots. And manage the traffic, say, okay, everybody who's reporting for all available boats, report to the pilot boat New York off the tip of Governor's Island, and we'll give you tasking. We had Marine inspectors, Coast Guard Marine inspectors on land at the time as well, helping to try to shepherd people to where the ferries and where the boats were, try to direct people to evacuate by water, because a lot of folks didn't realize that there was no other way to get off the island than that. We actually had Marine inspectors that went into subway stations because they were full of people, because people thought they would just wait for the next train to get out. Went down smoke-filled subway stations, go down there, clear them out, direct them towards the water. They were in communication with the pilot boat. They were in communication with Mike Day, who was on board the pilot boat, saying, hey, we've got some people here, and directing boats and so forth. The Marine inspectors, we talked about the stability, but the Marine inspectors were also, we had these tugs that don't typically carry passengers. So the Marine inspectors were giving a judgment. They're the ones who do the stability test and determine how many people can be carried on a vessel. Best judgment of how many, like the gentleman said on the video, not how many do you normally carry, how many can you can, and the Marine inspectors are there. Not so much the ferries, these guys this is what they do, this is how they roll, but like a tug vessel that doesn't typically carry people, how many people can we safely fit on this vessel? Because we don't want to evacuate people and create another situation.
So the first plane hits at 8:46, and then the call for all available boats comes at 10:45 or so. So there's that period of time, and you, Gulmar, you spoke about this, and Rick, you responded, very, very quickly. So talk about the first plane hits, and what did you do?
The first plane hit, and we saw it impact the tower, and nobody had smartphones. Nobody was all dialed in on information. There was a few people with flip phones, and a lot of the people who were driving into work and driving into the ferry, getting on the boat, they were giving us some of the information that they had heard on the radio. And they said a plane just hit the World Trade Center, and we saw the smoke billowing up, and we all thought it was a terrible accident. We were all picturing a little Cessna or some kind of small plane, but then they started saying, no, it was a passenger liner. So we thought some kind of tragic accident. As soon as the second plane struck the other tower, it was 9:03, I had just left Pier 79, which is about West 38th Street. And normally we load up people from New Jersey, bring them over to New York, and they all go to work. I was coming back with nobody on the boat except for me and my crew. we saw the second plane hit, and we immediately just took off. We stole the boat. We didn't report to our operations people in the company. We didn't call Arthur Imperator. We didn't tell anybody because I was there in '93 when the bombing happened at the World Trade Center, and we knew that most of our boats were shuffled down to evacuate people. We didn't know what was going to happen, of course. We thought it was just going to be, two buildings on fire. They was going to burn out. The firemen were going to, put the fires out. We were going to transition to massive boat lift of people out of the World Trade Center area. So I went downtown, and as soon as I saw the buildings on fire, I saw what I thought was furniture or debris falling from the building, and when we got close, we saw it was people jumping and falling. And it was very nearly overwhelming emotionally to see that, because some of those people we bring to work on the ferry, and we also saw people massing along the waterfront, along the seawall, and some of them were just in panic. The buildings were still upright, but no, they saw 2 planes strike the World Trade Center. There was talk of other planes. People were jumping into the water, swimming out of Manhattan, and all of our ferries are racing to the scene at 20 or 30 knots, and then now there's heads bobbing in the water, and they're waving their hands. So we had to stop the boat, deploy the rescue equipment, the rescue ladder, pull people out of the water, and my instinct was to drop them back off into Manhattan, and then go to a normal ferry dock, which was, we were being sent to Pier 11, which was, at the time, it was more people were flooding towards the Pier 11 Wall Street area. So as soon as I touched the seawall, there's just a large metal railing there. Everybody saw, ooh, a ferry boat. Literally, thousands of people just started swarming towards my boat, and there was no stopping them. They started crawling over the railing, climbing, pushing, shoving. I mentioned the woman with the seeing eye dog and people lifting her over the rail. And my deckhand, he's got a little hand clicker, and he's clicking as fast as he can. Captain, we're at 399, which is our maximum. I just said, just stop counting. And we kept loading, and we kept loading, and we kept loading. And then we were pulling away, and I used a loudspeaker, and I said, don't worry, we'll be back. We're coming back. And people were still jumping from the shoreline onto the boat, 5 or 10 feet, and grabbing onto the rails as we pulled away. And if anybody's seen Titanic, and they remember the scene of the lifeboats, as people started to panic and jumping across open water into the lifeboats, that's exactly what it was like. And that was just the first run. When we were taking those 399 people to Hoboken, everybody's on their cell phone talking a mile a minute, and somebody goes, I think they're gonna collapse. And I was like, no way, they're gonna burn out. The firemen will save the day, and they'll rebuild them. This is New York. We don't say, we don't give in. And nothing is impossible. Then the first tower collapsed, and everybody went dead quiet. And you can't get a New Yorker off their cell phone, but this particular time, everyone went completely silent. We knew that hundreds, thousands of people had just died in a blink of an eye. I quickly made the sign of the cross. I wasn't overly religious then, but now I am. We got to Hoboken, we unloaded, and people were trying to give us money. They said, I know, Arthur Imperator, I know this ferry isn't free. This is a private ferry. How much does it cost? We said, it's free, it's free, it's free. So we got them off, and they said, well, what are you guys going to do now? I said, we're going back in there. And they said, oh, God bless you. Good luck. And they all headed out. And when we went back in, that's when the call came in over the radio about all available boats head to Manhattan. And we had to go through the smoke cloud because there was a north wind blowing. And all that smoke was blowing to the southern tip of Manhattan, which the ferries were rounding Manhattan, going to Pier 11 Wall Street. And all the tugboats were coming up, the police boats, the fire boats, the Coast Guard boats. And on radar, you could see all the targets converging, and you couldn't see anything else. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. It was solid smoke, ash, dust. You could taste it on your tongue. And that's when I say there was divine intervention that day, because that many boats converging on the same point of land, the same area, all coming in at full speed. You couldn't communicate because everybody's talking on the radio at the same time. No boats collided. There were some near misses. You saw like a dim blue light over there or a dim red light over there, and you heard engines just roaring by. And somehow we all went through the smoke cloud and got to Pier 11 and just started loading more people throughout the day.
So, I mean, you call it divine intervention. I mean, how does that happen? I mean, it is unbelievable because it's not just the number of boats, 150 plus vessels, but also, as you said, after the collapses, you have dust. The visibility is down to what it was. It is unbelievable that no boats hit each other. I'm curious, John. It's the Coast Guard's job to enforce, and you made a little joke, but I mean, it's the nobody's watching. It's the Coast Guard's job to enforce regulations, but in that moment, that's not what was needed. So I'm curious, sort of, what that was like on the inside as you were handling that catastrophe.
Well, at that time, you deploy people ashore, and usually, like, a marine inspector's on scene, and they're reporting back if they're going to change anything or if they have to. But in this particular case, we just empower them, and we knew the situation. The ferries, for the most part, we were directing people to the ferries, but they were mostly controlling how many people they can carry. But it was all those other non-standard type vessels that carry passengers that we really were focused on making sure. But yeah, the rules get thrown out the window, and then you adapt what you know by, these are professionally trained, we have professionally trained Coast Guard inspectors, we have professionally trained mariners, and you lean in on your professional training and adapt to the circumstances that needed to be done.
I mean, for all three of you, this seems like something the maritime community was just especially well equipped to handle because of the oath you take to sort of help other people who are on the seas if they're encountering something. The knowledge of the sort. I'm sort of if you could sort of speak to the community itself in terms of being able to respond to something like this.
Well, I don't think that the vessels not colliding each other at Pier 11 was dumb luck. These are all professionals. These people are used to operating in tight waters around all different types of vessels. So it's if you ever watch an op sail that they've had and you see the pictures, we have one outside your office, Captain. That just shows a sea of boats, and they somehow manage to not collide with each other as well. So operating a boat, whether it's a small boat, a ferry boat, a cargo ship, you got to be good at what you do. You're going to be hitting on somebody every day. These and they're that good. So
in the end, as we sort of heard, hundreds of thousands of people, 300,000 to 500,000 people. Are taken from Manhattan and out, evacuated safely. It's an unbelievable story. I'm sort of noticing the time where it's already 6:55, but I guess a question I have is, with all of this, do you have a sense of the legacy of that day? I think it's, Rick, you say it was the greatest thing I ever did with my life. And there's something incredibly profound about that. And there's something about 9/11 where it's the worst of times with people stepping up. And as we were talking about earlier, it's regular people stepping up to do whatever they can when no one else can do it. And you see that over and over and over again. You see it with the Boatlift. You see it inside the towers. You see it in so many different places. So I'm curious, and I'll sort of open this up to all of you. And Eddie, we can start with you, of just the legacy of the Boatlift.
Well, these guys are the legacy, but you are all the legacy too. It's a story that touches people, inspires people, and helps us realize that even in the darkest moments, there's beauty and there's humanity. And that's what keeps us going, because the news cycle is horrendous, always. And terrible things happen, but it's how we surf through those. And it's when these guys actually just say, that's it, I'm just going in, I'm going to help. That's the legacy.
Yeah. I saw on the fireboat was one woman, she was injured and she was unconscious, and it was strangers helping strangers. Like I said, the flood of civilians came over and they jumped in the dark. Many were injured. And one person was cradling the other person's head in their lap, and they didn't even know them. And we got them all off the boat orderly, and no one got hurt or anything worse than that. So the fact that strangers are helping strangers is certainly something that we could use today, even with all the division going on in the world. that, let's forget the division and never forget how we worked together on 9/11.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my legacy is that leading up to that, I was working for the Coast Guard for 13 years. And then on that day, moving forward, it was a horrible day. I'm a New Yorker. It was an absolutely horrendous, horrifying day. One of the most horrifying days of my life. But it was also one of the days where I realized, A, really proud to be part of this Coast Guard organization. Really proud to be associated with them. B, really proud to be associated with this New York Maritime community. And C, really proud to just be a New Yorker, because everybody, like everyone's saying, truly, I know we throw that around, but everybody truly stepped up. Everybody.
For me, myself, normally a job on the water is relaxing and
It's not that relaxed.
well, let's just say it's better than maybe some of the
better than my
other
job.
some of the other jobs out there. Doctors, lawyers, pilots. Normally it's pretty routine, and you can just take solace in knowing that you're a trained professional, but you'll probably never need the skills you learned. I was in the Navy. We do Coast Guard drills for man overboard and first aid and fire and rescue drills on a regular basis. But you think you're never going to need those skills, and something like that happens. Of course, it's bigger than any one of us. But I always tell people I might have suffered some PTSD, some health issues, but there's no place I'd rather have been than behind the wheel of a ferry boat working on 9/11. That's the God's honest truth. And just as a side story, the owner of New York Waterway, Arthur Imperator, he was in Italy on a plane flying back, and his plane was grounded, and he kept screaming at the flight attendants, "I need to get to work. Those boats are my boats. You see them on the news. That's my company." They all thought he was crazy, but he was so committed as well. I mean, and that's what we're looking at here, is people who are committed to what they do, and it doesn't take a hero to just do the right thing at the right time, hold the boat an extra minute for an old lady, hand out water to somebody who needs it, come to a full stop at a stop sign, things like that. And I'm just so glad that I could also, look at the people around me, the passengers who appreciate us. And years later, they come to me and say, "I was on your boat on 9/11. One person says, 'You fished me out of the water on 9/11. You saved my life.' And then he just kept on walking." I'm like, dude,
That's New York.
in a rush. So, that's the legacy right there. You touch people's lives, but you don't expect any kind of reward, and not even a clap on the back. And something like this is really moving. It humbles me to be here and to be on the movie, the documentary that Eddie did such a great job with. So I'm just glad to be a small part of representing a small community of people.
Well, you're all examples, I have to say. We have a couple minutes, maybe for a question or two. If you do have a question, raise your hand, and then I will wait for a microphone is all I ask. Yeah, way in the back.
I think I could probably be loud.
Yeah, but just for those who are viewing online.
Okay, perfect. So my question's for Eddie. I am actually a Chief Petty Officer in the U.S. Coast Guard, so thank you for all your service. Eddie, so I'm curious, you didn't capture any evacuees, stories, their story. I mean, we just heard it at the tail end here, and that's what prompted the question. I am so curious to hear from the folks that took these ferries that were successfully evacuated. So were you able to capture anything?
We didn't shoot it for this. We had a very, we shot this thing in 3 days, and we had a quick turnaround. And by the time like I said, I got back in town and got caught up with my team's casting tapes and folders of information. It was like, bang, bang. But without a doubt, after that, for years, people were reaching out and telling us their stories. And we've always wanted to do a follow-up piece, but people think, well, we don't really need another film. We like this one. And so everybody's like, well, you did it. It's 10 minutes. Why do you need more? And so it's funny because every network was like, well, it's done, So I don't know why, but we would love to have heard a million people's stories as you guys do on the waters every day, because in New York, we are always hearing them and they're really moving. They are the powerful other side. But you're right. We should have had a chance to do that.
Yes, here in the front. Just wait for a microphone, sorry. Thank you.
I'll stand up.
Just wait, the microphone's working its way down to you.
I would like to know if any of the Coast Guard people or anyone got the names of the boat captains or whomever came in to help, and did you ever give them a certificate of recognition of anything like that for them to post in their wherever?
Take this one?
Yeah, I'd like to answer that. As a matter of fact, the Coast Guard did, and Department of Homeland Security, Department of Transportation, they did actually get the names of all the people who were working, commercial, and every mariner who took part in that day. They actually minted a special medal, the 9/11 Department of Transportation Medal of Valor, I believe it's called. It's a red, white, and blue medal, and they had a huge ceremony at the Winter Garden Theater.
And on board one of the buoy tenders down at South Street as well.
So yes, all the mariners' names were collected, and they were awarded a special medal.
Yeah.
That was a tasking in and of itself to get all those names together, but we managed to do it.
But thank you, and also thank you for saving my daughter.
Rick, I know you have a...
Yes, 9/11 I knew was an unprecedented moment. Like I said, it was very nearly overwhelming. At the end of the day, I did about 20 trips that day, 13 hours. My uniform was trashed, sweat, smoke, dirt, you can imagine. I threw everything out in the garbage, threw it all in the garbage before I even I wasn't driving naked, but I just threw everything in the garbage. The only thing I had the presence of mind to do is saying, well, this is a historic day, but what do you do to commemorate it or to remember just besides the memories? I took the flag off of my boat, the Henry Hudson. So I did remove the flag. I've had it for 22 years now. It's been. I was looking for a time to present it at a proper venue. It's slightly faded. It's torn. It probably still smells like the dust of 9/11. So I've sealed it so that nobody gets any health issues. This is a photo of my boat right here at the bottom. You could see, basically, you can't see the flag. It's a very dark photo, but there are some excellent photos of the boats in action on that day, aerial shots. And so I've saved the flag, and I would like to present it now to Noah and the 9/11 Museum. So. Thank you. Appreciate it. I know it's going to be in good hands. So.
Well, I have to say, the film starts with the quote, a hero is a person who does what they can. And these are three people who did what they could. So please join me in thanking all of our panelists and for all of their service. Thank you.